Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Connecticut Yankee Sanity. On today's episode, we'll talk about the left's political shenanigans. I remind my Democratic friends and viewers again that the tactics of the party's leaders and far-left extremists are not representative of mainstream Democrats. I'm commenting on them, not you. By now, we've become aware of their practice of falsely accusing Republicans of their own misdeeds, or simply making up an appropriate falsehood, the more outrageous the better, to deflect attention from themselves. Before we get into specifics, I'll read you an excerpt from a DNC white paper on the subject leaked to me by a mole on condition of anonymity. The prose is somewhat cumbersome, but try to follow along. In the big lie, there is always a certain force of credibility, because the masses are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. And thus, in the primitive simplicity of their minds, they fall victims more readily to the big lie than to the small lie, since they themselves often tell small lies in little matters, but would be ashamed to resort to large-scale falsehoods. It doesn't come into their minds to fabricate colossal untruths, and they don't believe that others could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. Even though the facts which prove this to be so may be brought clearly to their minds, they will still doubt and waver, and will continue to think that there may be some other explanation. For the grossly impudent lie always leaves traces behind it, even after it has been nailed down. It's a fact which is well known to all expert liars in this world, and to all who conspire together in the art of lying. Incredible, isn't it? Except if Hillary Clinton were watching, she'd have one of her tantrums, shake her finger under my nose, and scream, "You're a liar, Connecticut Yankee! That's not from any DNC white paper. It's right out of Hitler's Mein Kampf. Anyone knows that, you moron." So, here I am, not even 2 minutes into the video, caught in a lie myself. It is a quote from Hitler's Mein Kampf, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least for Mrs. Clinton to recognize it. It's possible that she has not studied the Führer's words on the subject, but if not, it's a hell of a coincidence that her own behavior should reflect his hallmark political style. I think we can assume that she has also studied Machiavelli's The Prince, the Cliff Notes version of which is that the end justifies the means. I start off in this depressing way because the Clintons, although fading from the scene, have dominated the Democratic Party ever since Bill sauntered into the Oval Office in 1993. Their traces, and hers in particular, definitely remain behind. Bill's modest contribution to presidential public relations was time to move on, so we'd all know how to react to whatever the latest dog pile was that he stepped in. Pretty tame, all in all. But Mrs. Clinton was more ambitious and certainly more ruthless. Moreover, the poor thing kept bonking her head against the glass ceiling. To achieve her objectives, she needed more muscular methods, and presto changeo, she became the role model for the new and unimproved Democratic leadership. Fast forward to the 2016 campaign and the dossier caper. That one deserves a gold star in the DNC exercise book for sure. In one stroke, Mrs. Clinton showed them how to pull off the biggest lie yet. They even subverted the Department of Justice and got James Comey and his FBI cronies on board. Dream up some ridiculous, scandalous behavior in a Moscow hotel room by the opposition candidate, pay an ex-MI6 spook with Kremlin connections to cobble together a dossier, nip over to the FBI for the big hats to sign off on it. Next, they present it to the FISA court for a rubber stamp. In no time, the gutter media is in a feeding frenzy while the FBI sleuths spy on the opposition campaign. You have to marvel at it. True, Mrs. Clinton was such a lousy candidate that she lost anyway, but never mind. Her campaign took bold, unapologetic skullduggery to new heights. Having shown her fellow Democrats how, step by step, the business is done, She stands a giantess among dwarfs in the realm of political corruption. Since then, the Dems, with the collaboration of the media, have had a field day. If I tried to list all the lies they've published to discredit Donald Trump, we'd be here until midnight. So we'll settle again for the Cliff Notes version. 1. The President and Vladimir Putin are inseparable, so much so that Mr. Trump, who was a Russian agent on a par with Kim Philby or the Rosenbergs, pursued the presidency with the specific aim of selling us out to the Kremlin to promote his business interests in Russia. 2. The Russians infiltrated our voting system, pressing their thumb on the scales to throw the election. Although Barack Obama asserted during the campaign that this was impossible, he clammed up once the media had revved its engines and was speeding around the track with the story. It was simply too juicy to waste. 3. Mr. Trump is a Nazi. Never mind that the term is short for National Socialism and that Mr. Trump stands for quite the opposite thing. Association with Hitler and the jackbooted brown-shirt thugs of 1930s Germany was the message for the masses. 4. Mr. Trump is a fascist. 5. Mr. Trump hates blacks, women, homosexuals, and pretty much anyone else who isn't a white supremacist like him, and so on and so forth. There's no evidence for any of this. They just say it. Much of it is enraged Dems lashing back at a president who keeps pulling their pigtails and sticking pins in their behinds. But the underlying intent is to wreck the man and his presidency by slander and libel, which is where Hitler's observation comes into play that, quote, the grossly impudent lie always leaves traces behind it, unquote. Even after it has been exposed, as happened here recently with the Mueller report, it still persuades a certain percentage of people that there must have been something to it. That's the payoff. The Dems are hoping, of course, that the poop they picked up off the streets of their flagship city, San Francisco, and hurled at the president will stick and prevent his re-election. Well, good luck. Your health is bound to be affected, Boris Pasternak wrote in Dr. Zhivago, a novel written and set in communist Russia. If day after day you say the opposite of what you feel, if you grovel before what you dislike, and rejoice at what brings you nothing but misfortune. On one of the rare occasions when the media pointed out Mrs. Clinton's on-again, off-again relationship with the truth, she demurely acknowledged it, implying that it was really just a matter of perception, not essence. But she knows who and what she is. The behavior comes at a cost to her and her party. The Democratic leadership has to be affected by promoting what they know to be lies and trying to live by and glorify those lies. Mrs. Clinton's own health, come to think of it, is none too robust, and the Democratic Party is certainly experiencing its share of misfortune. Well, if they want to sicken themselves with such behavior, it's a free country, but the injury to the party's mainstream is another matter. The irony is that if the Democratic leadership had been honest all along, Donald Trump might not have been elected, but too late now. Thanks for watching. Be sure to click like and subscribe to support the channel, and pass the link along. We'll see you back here next time.